Because right now it's really bad in Gaza. And I don't feel like I'm seeing that in our media, in our activism.
We've seen the deaths of over 16,000 civilians, Palestinians in Gaza, which include over 7,000 children. And to put that in some kind of a context, that is more civilians than were killed by the U.S. and its allies in almost 20 years of war in Afghanistan.
She was told to delete tweets saying, standing up for Palestinian rights. Whereas Gal Gadot is able to talk about October 7th, the Israeli military, Israel, her love for Israel, which is each to their own, that's her free speech. But to do the same for Palestine makes Rachel some kind of extremist, woke activist troublemaker.
When did liberalism lose its backbone? Mehdi Hasan teams up with Cynthia Nixon, yes, the Emmy-winning icon from Sex and the City, now one of the few Hollywood voices daring to break the Palestine silence, to expose the brutal truth: Trump's policies in Gaza are worse than Biden's. Yet the outrage has vanished like free speech on college campus. Why is Donald Trump, the man greenlighting ethnic cleansing in Gaza and the West Bank, getting a political hall pass from both the mainstream media and sections of the left? Where's the fury? Where's the activism? When Biden gets dragged, Trump, silent slaughter Palestinian, gets buried in hashtags and Hollywood hypocrisy. This isn't just another progressive chat. This is hard call out of selective outrage, the liberals' elite's Palestine exceptions, and the uncomfortable truth that Trump's Gaza policy is bloodstained sequel. The show is from Zateo, which is owned by Mehdi Hasan. So buckle up, Cynthia isn't here for photo ops. And Mehdi, he's naming names. Let's go.
What's frustrating for me when it comes to Trump, though, especially with the left, is it's not just the mainstream media or the New York Times or CNN that gives Trump a pass. I feel like elements of the left, because the left is so good at circular firing squads and, infighting.
Yes, totally.
Gives the fascist a bit of a pass. Gaza is a classic example of that. So Donald Trump gets elected. He benefits in some ways from the Democrats being so bad on Gaza. A lot of people in Michigan stay at home or defect to Trump or vote Jill Stein.
I have left-wing Muslim friends that they didn't vote for Trump, but they did not vote for Kamala.
Young people, people of color, Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, a bunch of people. And, Joe Biden became, for a period, genocide Joe. Kamala Harris, people were saying we can't vote for her. And I understood that. Completely understood the pain and the anger and not wanting to reward Democrats. But then you get Trump, who starts his administration with this fake ceasefire, gets all this great free publicity that Trump got Netanyahu to the table. We all knew phase 2 would never come. That ceasefire is long dead. Over 1,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza since March the 18th, several hundred children. The biggest massacre of children in any single 24-hour period since October the 7th. All aid blockaded into Gaza, even the minimal that was allowed in under Biden. In many ways, it's much worse now under Trump. But doesn't feel like that when I go on social media or when I meet people or talk about Gaza. I don't know if people are numb to it, people are exhausted by it, but I'm not seeing that. And I wonder how he gets away with this, because he's literally now presiding over the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the West Bank. And I'm not seeing the same outrage against him from some, yes, but from others that we saw against Biden. I wonder, is that because we hold the Democrats to a higher standard, or is that he just gets a weird pass? Because right now it's really bad in Gaza. And I don't feel like I'm seeing that in our media, in our activism.
I mean, I think it is a combination of things. One is that you feel like you scream and you scream and you scream and nobody seems to react. And I think another thing is, I think people are scared in a McCarthy kind of a way now.
Yeah.
You just try and find an opening. And I feel like the beating of the Palestinian filmmaker who made No Other Land, the beating by settlers and then the seizure by the IDF. I mean, I think there are people, 900 people in the academy just...
That first statement they put out was absurd.
Unbelievable.
And then they justified it saying, well, we've got diverse perspectives.
I know.
So we have to satisfy.
You've made it worse.
There's a pro-beating faction of the academy.
Right.
There's a
there are
pro-settler
good people
faction.
on both sides, I guess.
Exactly.
Right?
It's Charlottesville on steroids in the West Bank.
Right.
Yeah, you wonder, did we poll our members? And they said, whoa, don't be mean to the settlers. Yeah, it was bizarre. The statement was awful. The justification was awful. The follow-up. I'm glad Yuval Abraham, who is the Israeli co-maker of that film, really called out the academy for that. I mean, look, you and I have talked about this before as well, but Hollywood, which is this liberal bastion that stood up to Trump in his first term, that takes, liberal positions on everything from abortion to gay rights to Darfur, go down, George Clooney, go down the list. But there's always that pep. There's progressive except Palestine. There's always that Palestine exception where you know, the entertainment industry does not come on board in the same way. You obviously have bucked that trend. You and Mark Ruffalo and a handful of others. You signed the Artists for Ceasefire letter shortly after October 7th. You even went on a hunger strike for 2 days in November 2023 to try and draw attention to this. And I remember watching you in December of 2023. You went on The View and you did not mince your words.
Yeah.
Let's watch a clip.
We've seen the deaths of over 16,000 civilians, Palestinians in Gaza, which include over 7,000 children. And to put that in some kind of a context, that is more civilians than were killed by the U.S. and its allies in almost 20 years of war in Afghanistan. As I say every time I speak about this, what Hamas did was terror, brutal and terror and unforgivable. But I don't think we get to a better place with more civilian deaths. And that is why, in my belief, we need a permanent ceasefire right now.
When you went on The View, what were you thinking at that time about, I don't want to single out the people on The View, but in general, Hollywood, entertainment? You're taking this position that's very unpopular at the time. This is just a couple of months after October the 7th. A lot of people in your industry want to say what you're saying, but they're worried about professional consequences. What are you thinking in that moment? I'm
thinking that, you know, I have Jewish children, and my Jewish child, my oldest one in particular, is the person who is telling me, you can't not speak. You can't. He said, I'm doing everything I can in my smaller way. You have a big megaphone. Please do whatever you can. And I think it's really important to not let anyone confuse your words, not to let anyone think that this is in some way a defense of Hamas, and just make sure that there's no possibility that they don't think that you don't think that what happened on October 7th was horrific and unacceptable and devastating. But I think that it's really important to just keep saying women and children and elderly people are being not only just bombed and shot in unimaginable numbers, but like you say, they're also being starved, and there's no water, and there's no fuel, and there's no medical care. There is nothing. And so if we just, what I tried to do on The View was just keep bringing it back to that, not who's right, who's wrong, who started it, what's the solution. It's like, we can't keep killing children and women and babies.
Fatima Bhutto, who's a Sateo contributor, a Pakistani novelist, she's been very critical in her pieces for us of what she claims is the hypocrisy. She argues is the hypocrisy and silence of white liberal feminists in the West who will stand up for women in Iran or Iraq or Afghanistan, but Palestinian women who are having to have C-sections without painkillers, no access to kind of sanitary products, having to use bits of tent. Where is the feminist movement when it comes to Palestinian women?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's a human issue, but certainly if you care about women and you care about children, these are not combatants. There is. I mean, how long are we going to hear? Well, we had to kill them. They were being used as shields. It's what does Bill Burr say? Something about like, if a guy, comes up with a baby in front of him, you don't shoot the baby. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
You have to find another way.
Unless you've dehumanized that baby.
Unless you dehumanize baby to the point where every single Palestinian is a terrorist.
Or their lives just don't matter when they die. Like, it's the equivalent of killing
but they're
insects
all
or ants.
somehow complicit,
yes.
Right?
And we've seen that on Israeli television. They've talked about even children being complicit in terrorism. The rhetoric is bad. Just one last question on this. To go back to Hollywood, you mentioned earlier about politicians having to worry about donors. Hollywood actors don't have to worry about donors, especially the kind of A-listers who make a lot of money, but they do have to worry about their movies.
Yes.
And,
they have
who's
to worry
funding
about
the movies.
Audiences. They have to worry about, you said that Hollywood is very left-wing, but except for Palestine.
Liberal.
Right, liberal Hollywood.
It's not left on the economy.
Most of Hollywood is liberal, I would say. But again, if you talk about McCarthyism, which we were in a moment ago, I mean, that was Hollywood, right? That's where he, the army, okay, and the government workers, but McCarthy made the most inroads in Hollywood, which is like, we can be very liberal, we can be very progressive, but we can also be very easily scared.
And become an adjunct of the state.
And because we don't want the government to come after the studios, the studio bosses don't want, and people on, now that there are all these different streaming services and their subscription. But, when I started out back in the day, there was only network television, and it was constantly like, don't do that. The sponsor won't like it. So we're very liberal, but we're very
still worried about who
very
pays the bills.
scared, very scared.
Have you been following the row over Rachel Ziegler and Gal
I
Gadot
have.
and Snow White?
I have.
She was told to delete tweets saying standing up for Palestinian rights, whereas Gal Gadot is able to talk about
Yeah.
October 7th, the Israeli military, Israel, her love for Israel, which is each to their own. That's her free speech. But to do the same for Palestine makes Rachel some kind of extremist, woke activist troublemaker.
Right. And she's playing Snow White. She's well cast. Snow White is going to be concerned and care about Palestine. Let's just say.
Okay.
We
got to talk about New York and New York politics.
Yes.
Andrew Cuomo,
He's back.
who you know well,
I do.
who you ran against,
Yes.
is running for mayor of New York.
Yes, he is.
Meanwhile, the incumbent Democrat has just announced he's no longer a Democrat. He's going to run as an independent. Eric Adams, who just dodged being prosecuted because he did a deal with the Trump administration. He's now holding up a book of Kash Patel to say everyone should read Government Gangsters, a conspiracy theory book about the deep state from a far-right associate of Donald Trump, who's now the FBI director. It's a real shit show in New York right now.
It's crazy.
It's like Adams, Cuomo. Let's just start with Cuomo. He was driven from office as governor because 13 women accused him of some form of sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, etc. He denies it, but various institutional bodies said actually these are valid, credible claims. He's been fighting it with taxpayers' money in court. A lot of Democrats who called for him to stand down are now endorsing him for mayor.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot.
Okay, some, like Gregory Meeks, congressman, has said he called for him to go. Now he's endorsed him. There's a bunch. There's a list. What is going on with I know Americans in general have the memories of goldfish.
What Cynthia and Mehdi just did wasn't a conversation, it was an unmasking. They cracked open the illusion that Trump is some non-factor in Gaza's ongoing horror show. He isn't. He's the architecture of a darker phase, one where silence is weaponized, media distractions run wild, and settler voices is met with press release, not protest. And while Hollywood pretends neutrality is noble, people are being erased in real time. Cynthia called out the rod, Mehdi exposed the cowardness, and together they remind us complicity doesn't always look like a mega hat. Sometimes it wears a peace pin and says nothing when it matters most. So ask yourself, if you're still quiet about Gaza under Trump, were you ever loud for the right reasons? Sound off in the comments, let me know what your takes are. And don't forget to like and share, y'alls. I'll catch you on the next one.